Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Generally Irritable with Erica Reddick. I am super excited to have Mr. Ben Luna here with me this evening. He is an attorney in Burlington, and he is suing the city over the way they handled the charter change vote this year. So let me get set up here per usual. We're going to get our little stage set up behind the scenes and give everybody a minute to log in and say hello. Mr. Luna, I know you told me not to call you Attorney Luna, I'm being too formal with you, but I like to be respectful.
You're in trouble. Call me Ben.
I promise I will try to remember to call you Ben the rest of the time. So why don't you start by sharing with our audience just a little bit about yourself and how, because you're not from Burlington originally.
That's correct. I'm not sure what gave that away, but yeah, my name is Ben Luna. I'm really happy to be here, Erica. Thank you for having me on the program.
Yeah.
I am an interloper from California from about 20 years ago. And in a past life out in California, I actually served a 4-year term on the Morro Bay City Council as a 25-year-old. When I got sued for $6 million over a ballot initiative that sought to protect wetlands on the central coast of California. And at that point, I was thrown into the legal fry pan at 25 years old over a $6 million suit. That sparked my interest in law. And fast forward, that experience in voting and defending a ballot measure, also I won my city council seat by about 10 votes. Local municipalities and community have been near and dear to my heart for many years.
That's awesome.
And I started as a member of the California Conservation Corps. I fought fires in California. Now I fight fires in the courtroom. And ultimately, I have a significant background in community, including here in Vermont. Governor Douglas, some years ago, appointed me to serve on the Vermont Commission on National and Community Service. I have volunteered widely here in Vermont, both in the Northeast Kingdom, here in Burlington, served as a Deputy State's Attorney of Caledonia County. And
wow.
I became very interested in this election when, to borrow the title of your program, Erica, I became generally irritable when I began to study the voter information published by the City of Burlington in the lead up to the March 2nd, 2021 annual town meeting, proposing a variety of charter changes. As I began to delve into voter information documents published by the City of Burlington, I became irritable because I became confused. And as an attorney, I love digging into nuanced issues. I dig like my old pit bull. God bless the canine soul. And I began to dig into what I perceived to be very confusing voter information. And that was the weekend before the election. And the entire week of the March 2nd special, the town meeting, I was very irritated about why I was confused over the voter information. And the following weekend, I sat down with all the documents linearly. I opened up a table and studied everything very, very closely. And it took hours of analysis to tease out significant voter information errors in this election.
So it's fascinating. I remember when we first spoke about the lawsuit, and you said, I'm not even a landlord, and some of these things don't necessarily affect me, but it was this egregious misuse of the law or misuse of the voting process that you just said.
Violation of the law.
Violation of the law. And you said, no, I can't stand for this.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. I don't have anything to gain from this election or anything to lose. I'm not a landlord. I'm not going to be affected one way or another by the outcome of what happened. But what does affect me is an erosion of constitutional principles.
Yes.
What does affect me is misleading elections. And so I come at this really from that background in community involvement. I love community. I consider my community a larger part of my home.
Yeah.
I guard that home, and I guard that home closely. And so when I see the local government taking an action that runs contrary to Vermont voter law, and I see people have been misled, here's the other thing, Erica. I'm single. I don't have children. I am engaged. And so I have more time and perhaps a lot of energy and discipline to do this kind of stuff. And this is really out of concern. This lawsuit against the city is out of concern for working folks in the city of Burlington. A lot of people out there that are struggling to put food on their table. They don't have time to do this stuff. And they don't have time to try to wade through super confusing voter information that they're not gonna be able to understand the limitations of their own lives and just trying to get by.
Right.
It shouldn't be this difficult.
And I think it's interesting that, I mean, it's so interesting to listening to you talk about voter integrity, election integrity, and these things. And, there was a part of me that was like, oh, this must be a Republican. This must be a right winger, because I feel like, I'm a Republican and I feel like we're the only ones talking about it. And then when we talked and you were like, nope, I'm very much an independent. I come from California. And then you were sharing your background of community engagement and stuff like that. Like, that's the kind of stuff you normally hear about. Like being concerned about voter stuff is like a Republican thing. And then, community, I'm generalizing here. And then people think, oh, people who are community engagement are all like Democrats or whatever. And this is not ideological for you. This is not personal for you. This is just principle.
Exactly. And you brought up my political affiliation. Look, most of my life, I was a Democrat. I was raised by a very liberal father. I worked in very liberal environments. I worked about 12 years with the California Conservation Corps. I told you I got started in law because I got thrown into the legal fry pan by protecting environmental wetlands. I have worked for the state of California's governor's office. I headed up the Cesar Chavez Day of Service and Learning, promoting the values of Cesar Chavez for years for the governor's office in California. At the same time, I prosecuted crime for 5 years with the Caledonia State's Attorney's Office. And so, ultimately, yes. And I was appointed by Governor Douglas, a Republican, to serve on the Vermont Commission on National Community Service. What I'm doing has nothing to do with partisanship. I disdain partisanship because I think it's eroding the fabric of this country. I disdain it immensely, which is why I am a registered independent and have been a registered independent now for years.
Yeah.
And so I come at this with that point of view.
Yeah. And I really wanted to take a minute to establish that at the beginning, because I imagine, and you can correct me, but I imagine a lot of the local media and other folks who maybe have something to lose are probably trying to paint you in a certain light.
Well, it's interesting. I've received a fair amount of feedback. I heard a little bit of feedback that people were trying to compare my election challenge to our lab because it's hysterical. They were trying to compare my election challenge to the Trump's challenge of the election. And that's just, can I say asinine? I don't know, on your show. That was absolutely an asinine comparison. I have received resounding support. I have received so many emails from people I don't know, I didn't know.
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Here's the thing. And this is not to excuse anything that has happened in the past, but I just have to point out that I think it's really funny that anybody is complaining that there are people who care enough about election integrity and our voting rights and things like that to question and make sure things are operating correctly. It's like, if you don't just inherently trust the government, which we have so many reasons not to trust the government, but if you don't inherently just trust the government and whatever they say, it's like you're some kind of a right-wing nut job. And it's like, we Democrats and Republicans used to agree that the government could not be trusted.
Yeah, and talking about trust, and let's talk about facts here. I want to make sure that viewers and listeners know that I've published a website called votesmartburlington.com.
Yes.
A website called votesmartburlington.com. Anyone can go there now and find the lawsuit that I filed against the City of Burlington, and they can find the 9 exhibits that provide all of the support for my lawsuit. And if they go to the website, they can look at the lawsuit, they can look at the exhibits, and decide for themselves whether or not my lawsuit has merit. And I think that any listener or viewer who takes that time and has an open mind and looks at what the city printed in black and white, you're going to see that my lawsuit is completely factually justified. And we'll see how the City of Burlington grossly and glaringly violated Vermont voter law in publishing a warning, the notice to the election, that clearly on its face did not include the disclosures that they were statutorily required to by the state of Vermont.
So let's show this. I'm going to show everybody this website. So here is the main page. Let's see. Here's the main page. So I love Ben. Oh, see, I said Ben. I didn't say Mr. Luna. Okay, I get points for that. Ben, I love how you put it all in order for people, because I think that's one of the things that can be so hard. It's like you said, everybody is working, raising their family, trying to get by, doing whatever it is they do. And so it's like sitting down to dig into things being messed up is really challenging. And you just it's like, boom, it's all in order, chronological order. So you can see what came out first, what came out second, what was supposed to come next. You really laid this out beautifully.
Well, it's just the opposite of what the city did. You'll see a note that I make below on that lawsuit website. I make a note to people who might be looking at it saying, look, if you open up one of these exhibits and it appears confusing, that's because it is.
Yeah.
I didn't write it. I didn't publish it, right? Someone from the City of Burlington did.
Right.
And so, but to really appreciate what happened with this election, really a reader needs to read the lawsuit and look at the exhibits to see what a cluster, what a train wreck. Whether this was intentional or not, I don't know. Eric, I've been asked by many people, do I think this was intentional? Did they do this on purpose? I really don't know, Erica, but what I do know is this. I can tell you this.
Yeah.
It was either intentional. It was either intentional that the city published this horrible information, or it was extraordinarily negligent, careless, sloppy. Neither one of those is good.
Neither of those is good. One is bad and one is worse.
Neither of those is good. Little municipalities outlying Burlington and other towns did a better job than this.
With less lawyers. Do you actually know?
And less resources. But let's talk about that a second, Erica. I don't know, right? I don't know that this garbage that was written was done by lawyers. I smell politics. I smell politics involved with this.
Yes. Well, and that's do we know how many attorneys the city employs?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say 4 or 5.
If somebody knows the answer to that, put it in the chat for us. I want to know how many attorneys the city employs. So you think so to you, it doesn't even sound or read like a lawyer wrote it. Is that because it's not like linear, or like, was it the words that were used? What do you think?
Some of this stuff and the way it's organized looks like a seventh grader published it. It would have been, wait, it looks like Ben Luna, when I was in seventh grade, I would have published this garbage. I was a horrible student all through high school.
So it's like, here's,
it is
go ahead, sorry.
what my homework assignment would have looked like. I want to comment on this. I want to comment on this piece.
Yeah.
You know, Max Tracy, city councilor, when Max Tracy was interviewed about my lawsuit, yeah, he said, "Oh, what do you mean? We did everything right. There's nothing wrong, and we held all of these meetings." And hey, to the city's credit, there was a lot of meetings that were held. There was a lot of dialogue. But let me be clear, Erica.
Yeah.
Just because you turn in a term paper doesn't mean it's equality.
Well, and I know for a fact, having tried, or, you know, having done my best to be as involved in Burlington politics as possible, there are, what is it, like 20 standing committees and commissions. And that doesn't even include the extraneous ones that they add on when they want to do something special. And then a lot of times these committees and commissions meet at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where people are working and they can't attend. And like, if I want to know what's going on, I would literally, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, I would have to make it a full-time job to try to keep up with all of the stuff that the city of Burlington is doing.
Erica, you bring up a great point, and that in Councilor Mac Tracy's comment, he says, okay, well, we had all these public meetings, but let's be realistic. Let's be realistic and let's be honest. The working public in the city of Burlington doesn't have time to sit in on a meeting and listen to every detail or participate, because the working public out there are raising children. They're in a pandemic. They're struggling financially, right? It just shows such disconnect to
and keeping it, and that's all last year too. I'm trying to remember where all the meetings were, but keeping in mind also the political climate we've been dealing with the last year, people are even too afraid to show up to meetings or do things because they are targeted. They're afraid to lose their job. They're afraid to, you know, be harassed by people in their community. And so I'm blaming the city council for this, because many of our city councilors actually encourage this harassment, and you know, doxing isn't the right word, but they encourage the cancel culture. We'll say they encourage. One of them actually, at least one time, led a group of protesters to the mayor's house. So if you think like a normal person isn't going to be intimidated when our Burlington city councilors are leading hordes of protesters to people's homes, why would anyone want to participate or pay attention in what's going on in the city government?
So let's set aside fear and talk about fact for a second. I want to draw your listeners' attention to a fact and a violation. So if you could pull up, it is Exhibit 8, I believe it is, which is the warning that was published in 7 days. The city's warning.
Wait, hold on, let me get this right.
It's Exhibit 8, and if you bring it up, there it is.
Hold on though. I'm trying to make it, I guess maybe I can only do that when we're both in the frame. Okay, here's Exhibit 8.
Yeah, and you scroll down a little bit.
Yep.
Past all the ward information. Let me just discuss it. So for your viewers and listeners, this is the warning. This is required by statute. The state of Vermont says when you're going to propose a charter amendment, you publish a warning. And here's the most glaring violation, the most misleading violation of voter law in Vermont.
Yeah.
If you scroll down a little bit more, so this warning, this document, and what the law says if you're going to propose a charter amendment, you include the language of that charter amendment on this warning that viewers are looking at right here.
Yeah.
The law goes on to state that if the language of a proposed charter amendment will not fit on this warning, then you have to disclose to the voting public that there is language missing, that what is in the warning is not the language of the proposed charter amendment. So you have to, A, disclose to the public that the charter amendment language is missing, and B, you also have to disclose to the public where they can go to find that charter amendment language.
Oh, so is that supposed to be here with this paragraph right here, or?
It should have, ideally, because that's right there. That is right before the charter amendments. If you scroll back up, article number 1 there, right, is approval of a school budget. That was the first thing that appeared on this particular warning, right?
Okay.
You scroll down, you see all the numbered articles that I've challenged.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
They're all there. So in the lead into that, and that somewhere on that document, right? Somewhere. Nowhere on that document that was published in 7 days. That document was published at the city's website. The document was published in all polling places on election day. Nowhere in that document does it tell voters that Articles 2, 4, and 7, those proposed charter amendments, were left off this ballot. That the language of those charter amendments is missing on this warning. Nowhere in this warning that was published does it tell voters where they can find that information.
That's crazy.
So
okay, so they have to warn it in like a newspaper.
Yes.
Is that right? They have to warn it out in public.
Yes.
And then on this document somewhere, it's supposed to show, hey, this isn't the whole language. We're going to, go to the City of Burlington website or something like that. Go to this link or this publication or something to go read.
The statute says you can contact the city clerk and the city clerk will get you a copy, or go to the website, go do something, right? But the fact that this warning had no disclosure that the articles, each of those articles, 2, 4, and 7, are about 5 paragraphs long. None of the actual language, Erica, none of the actual language for Articles 2, 4, and 7 actually appear on the city's warning.
No, look at 5 paragraphs. This is like 3 sentences.
That's in the warning.
Yeah.
That's not the actual language. That's a summary. That's not the actual language. So people read that warning and they're thinking, oh, look, here's the summary. There's the charter amendment, right? There's a charter amendment. And unless someone told them, a neighbor, someone said, hey, you know what? I was looking into that. Actually, the city's warning left off the actual language to the charter amendments for 2, 4, and 7. They wouldn't know. They would have no clue.
Oh my gosh.
So it's super misleading.
So
and that's just the beginning, Erica. That is the most glaring violation. It's clear.
Okay.
I'll read you just a second. I don't like doing this. Yeah. So, Chapter 17, Section 2645, subsection A6B2. It's in my lawsuit. It says that warning shall state that an official copy of the charter proposal is on file for public inspection in the office of the clerk of the municipality, and the copies thereof shall be made available to members of the public upon request.
So that's what it says in our law that they were supposed to do.
That's right. They're supposed
Vermont state law.
Vermont state law. What I just read to you, it's in the complaint. I quote the statute directly. Vermont state law says if you're not going to put the language of a charter amendment on the warning, then you have to tell people that you're leaving it off the warning, and you have to tell people where to find it. The city didn't do that.
That seems like this is this is one of those things that when you and I spoke before and we talked about it a little bit earlier on the program is, you know, it's like there's only two things it could be. One is incompetence or deceit. You know, it's like that is, I feel like the city should have known better. Like that seems like an amateur mistake.
Total amateur mistake. I mean, a first-year law school student would have caught that, should have caught that. But here again, I don't know, and I'm not going to blame city attorneys because this could be politics we're talking here, right?
Oh my gosh.
There's certainly political influences. There's an election, 2 mayors. Who knows which one's going to get elected? I don't know. But I wouldn't necessarily pin this on the city attorneys. If it was one of the city attorneys, someone needs to have a discussion there because that is a softball issue.
So the obvious kind of question that I have, and I'm sure our viewers have, is what are you seeking for damages? Or like, how does a lawsuit like this work? Is the goal to like reverse the would it be to reverse the election? What would be like damages? What are you seeking from the lawsuit?
So two things. First of all, to be clear, ultimately, unless I settle with the City of Burlington, right, unless I settle with them, and I'll tell you what settlement would look like for me with the city. Ultimately, it would be up to the court to decide whether or not the City of Burlington violated the statute. The statute I mentioned is just clear. They violated it. There's no doubt about it. And then whether or not Articles 3 and 7 are unconstitutionally vague, the court would decide that. It would be up to the court to decide whether or not to reverse the election and tell the city, hey, you did it wrong, you screwed up, you violated election law, do it over again.
Yeah.
I tell you, Erica, one of my great hopes for the outcome of this lawsuit is that the City of Burlington make a permanent change to their publication of voter information. I have proposed in Exhibit 9. Exhibit 9 reflects the framework, the voter information framework that comes from the state of California. I know about voter information law in California because I was elected there and I've voted there for many years. And what they do in California for ballot measures, such as the charter amendments here, and this is what I'm proposing to the city, and I might settle with the city if we'll agree to make some permanent changes. Right? What they do in California, what I call the voter information framework, is that in a ballot measure, in the publication of voter information, such as the warning, what goes out to the community, there is a pro section, there is a con section with a limited number of words. Each side gets an equal number of words to write a pro, for, and a con against what's being proposed. But they take it further in California. They have
and that's I'm going to pull this up here just one second. So this is where this section, the bottom page of that home page, is talking about your recommendation.
Yes.
Right?
I call this, and in my website at votesmartburlington.com, I'm asking Burlington voters and residents to write to the city and express support for a new voter information framework. And that voter information framework comes from the state of California, and with a document that you were just looking at, that comes from Yolo County. But if you go back to the prior slide there to my website, really the essence of what I'm proposing are these three things here. One, that any ballot measure includes a pro and a con section. On top of that, there is an independent analyst who writes an independent interpretation of what the proposed ballot measure or charter amendment is. So some independent person who is not being swayed politically writes what it is. On top of that, there is an independent fiscal analysis.
Yeah.
Right?
What is that now? Yeah.
So some fiscal analysts will write whether or not there is a fiscal impact, right? That creates greater transparency right, about what's being proposed.
I have to tell you, Ben, this is one of my biggest complaints. First of all, that number 3 is probably my favorite part. I mean, I like all of it, but number 3, because I always say it's like the people in charge can't do math. And it's basic math. This is addition and subtraction. Like, you have to, and I went in one time. It was I think it was the Charter Change Committee, because it was another tax that they voted in last year. And of course, it got voted in because everybody just votes yes on everything. So I went into the Charter Change Committee meeting, and I went up to there was a whiteboard in the room, and I wrote, this is what my salary is. This is how much I pay in income tax. This is how much my property taxes are. This is how much, and I just kept subtracting and subtracting and subtracting. And I was like, so basically, and we're not rich, like we're not balling, we're doing okay, but we're not balling by any means. And by the time it was all said and done, as middle to lower middle income people, we pay more than 60% of our income in the form of some tax, whether it's income tax, local state tax, property tax, and all these other taxes. And I said, so given that you already take 60% of my income between the state, federal, and local municipalities, how much more of my money do you believe that you're entitled to?
Yeah.
And I looked at the room, and they all just looked at me blankly, like no one had ever sat and done math before.
Yeah, so to take that and to take the voter information framework that I'm proposing, and number 3, as you identified, a fiscal impact, if someone had done that with the charter proposals 3 and 7, right, some analysts would have said, this is a proposed carbon tax, right? This is a proposed carbon tax on residential consumers of natural gas and a consumer of commercial consumers of natural gas. And if this is passed, and if down the road voters approve that further, right, you're looking at probably fiscally an increase in cost of the food you buy at restaurants, for instance.
Oh my God.
Or at hotels that are heating their hotel rooms on natural gas, or on the restaurants downtown here in Burlington. They're not cooking your food on electric stoves. I can tell you that right now. So those burgers.
I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of that, Ben. Right? And I thought about that. Like, I didn't even think of that.
All those things, all those great foods that we enjoy, all of that's likely going to go up in price, right? Because the city would impose a carbon tax on the consumption and use of natural gas. And look, put the information out there and let people decide. And that fiscal analysts would have also said, okay, this is also going to lead to an eventual imposition of a carbon tax on residential consumer of natural gas.
And the other thing that they don't seem to, I mean, this particular one they won't acknowledge is, oh, well, we're going to get everybody to use electric. And it's like, I literally asked this of Councillor Hansen and Councillor Hightower in a meeting during the election. I was invited as a guest to speak as a Senate candidate, and it was the beginning part. And I asked them, what is your intention for producing enough power to power all of these new electric heaters and whatnot? Is it to burn more wood chips? And then I just stopped talking and I looked at them. What is your intention for producing enough power? Is it to burn more wood chips? And they had no answer.
Well, again, part of what's driven this lawsuit is, one, the deception, the misrepresentation, but also a concern for people here, especially low-income people, right? I will say, it made me very irritable, super irritable. I don't know, not just generally, I mean to the core, very irritable.
Wicked mega.
that I don't remember the city councilor, but when this was being discussed, this whole carbon tax thing, someone made the comment of, well, people just need to deal with a little bit of inconvenience, and it's no big deal, right? And to me, I recall, I hearken back to Congressman Chaffetz, who once said that poor people, gee, if they just discontinued their cell phone subscriptions, they could afford health insurance. It was as asinine as that. And it made me really mad because I live in the Old North End. And I know that a lot of the demographic that lives in the Old North End, right? If their natural gas bill goes up, it's going to be a lot more than just a little inconvenience for someone who is just barely scraping by. That single parent, that single mother, that single father, right? And this council member says, oh, just a little, no big deal, just a little inconvenience. That's garbage.
Yeah. It's like, all I can imagine, and I'm speculating here, and I know you're not really allowed to speculate too much as an attorney, but I just think they must not know any real people. Like, do you only hang out with wealthy, elite people who are like on trust funds and don't work for a living? Because you have to be so disconnected from reality to not understand that you're going to harm the people you're going to harm the most are the middle and lower classes.
Erica, I got to interrupt just a second. And I might get a little emotional on this because it's a super sensitive issue. One of my neighbors, Tony, Anthony Wharton, an African-American man. Tony was an African-American man, low income and barely making it. And I knew Tony for about 5 years. Tony smoked like a chimney. He drank like a fish, and he lived in a little tiny rundown, crappy apartment. Right? He lived on $210 a month. Tony lived on $210 a month of Social Security. Right?
Wow.
Tony, I was with Tony the last year of his life. I volunteered to be his power of attorney. He died last year of colon cancer. And for someone to say that my friend Tony, who's barely making it, who's barely got food in his refrigerator, that, oh, a little carbon tax is no big deal.
Just an inconvenience.
Just an inconvenience, minor inconvenience. To my friend Tony, who's just barely making it. And Tony, there are hundreds of Tonys in Burlington.
Yeah.
Barely making it.
Yeah.
And to be so arrogant as to say that low-income people, oh, just a minor inconvenience. That's offensive. That's offensive. And it shows
and they say
disjunct.
And they'll say things like, oh, well, that guy, he'll get the carbon, he'll get a rebate or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, but then what about the apartment that he rents when you force that landlord to put a new $15,000 furnace in, and that landlord has to make up the extra cost or the extra taxes that you're imposing on them for having a gas heater? Guess who's going to end up paying that in the end?
But bringing it back to this, right? Be honest with the voters, because those articles 3 and 7 say nothing about a carbon tax. They talk about regulating thermal energy systems. Here, I'm going to read it. To regulate thermal energy systems in residential and commercial buildings, including assessing carbon impact or alternative compliance payments for the purpose of, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I mean, nowhere in here does it talk about taxing residential and commercial consumers of, it's Article 3.
Yeah.
Look at Article 3, right? Regulating thermal energy systems.
Yep.
Like, what?
Yeah, who even knows what that means?
What does this mean? I don't know.
People are like, oh, it's for the environment. Yes.
And I only know some of this because I'm privileged enough to have clued into some of the community dialogue about this. But this says nothing about any carbon tax.
No, which is really what it is. That is the intention of it.
Erica, we were talking about numbers earlier and counting. I want to just take a second to show your listeners, I'm going to have to look at my complaint, but to show how absolutely confusing the publication of information was in this election. In addition to what I've already noted, bear with me just a second.
Yeah. Where's the complaint? Lawsuits and exhibits.
Okay, that's it. Okay, here we go. All right, these are all exhibits. These are all exhibits. This is all supported in my complaint. All reader or listeners got to do is go look at this, right?
Go to, it is votesmartburlington.com. Go to votesmartburlington.com.
Votesmartburlington.com. People can find the lawsuit and the exhibits for themselves. And I'm sorry for not looking, but there's only one way to do this, and this is read.
No, you're okay.
So published on January 5th, 2021, the city published a revised notice of first and second public hearings on proposed charter amendments for the March, this is their headline, for March 2nd, 2021 annual meeting. The numbered ballot articles to be voted on, as published in that January 5th notice, it numbered 1 ranked choice, 2 airport board, 3 just cause eviction, and 4 thermal energy regulation. That was the numbering.
They're not in the same order.
Well, no, none of this is. So that
sorry for interrupting.
That was the January 5th publication. All right. Go to January 6th. On January 6th, the City of Burlington published, quote, official copy of charter changes. All right. And they did number in that same article, rank choice 1, airport 2, just cause 3, thermal energy regulation 4. Then on January 26th, the city published in 7 days, right, the warning, right? And then the warning has number 1, school board, number 2, airport, number 3, thermal energy, number 4, ranked choice voting, number 5, just cause eviction, number 6, cannabis sales, number 7, building decarbonization. That was published on January 26th. Then published on February 10th, right? The city published a revised copy of charter changes, right? That numbered ballot articles differently. Right? February 10th, they've got number 1, airport board, number 2, thermal energy regulation, number 3, ranked choice, number 4, just cause eviction, and then they repeated 4 twice. They've got 2 number 4s, 1 just cause eviction, and another number 4 as thermal energy regulation.
Right. Yes, is the same number.
So
wow. It's like
none of the numbering on the city's warning or these other publications, it was entirely off. And I only figured out, I cracked the puzzle because I lined all of this stuff up linearly. Finally, the light went on, but it shouldn't take that to figure out what's going on.
That is so crazy. Okay, so I want to back up a little bit.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about what you're seeking for damages. And so you said if the city stops being nonsense, that's really what you want. And those are my words, not yours, just so everybody knows. That's me paraphrasing. So here are your recommendations. It's on the bottom of this homepage, or the exhibits page. Wait, is this the homepage? It's the lawsuit and exhibits page.
The lawsuit page. That's the second page of the website.
So what exactly? Because we've been exploring the topics of, let me back up even more. Everybody that's watching, you are welcome to ask questions. If you have any questions for Ben Luna about his lawsuit, about what's going on in the city, or the charter changes, feel free to just type it in the chat section, because we'll take your questions. We'll read them on air, and we're going to explore this because this is really meant to be community engagement. This is educational, and we want you to feel empowered, not only to help yourself in, for Burlington residents, but this is also really good information for people in any municipality, especially in Vermont. If you are concerned about the way that your charter changes are happening, if the voter rules are not being followed, you can create a complaint, and you can file a lawsuit.
I want to Eric, if I can,
yeah.
about people, empowering people. I want to make sure that they know at my website, votesmartburlington.com, I include all the contact for all the city councilors. I even went as far as drafting a letter for people that if they just want to copy and paste it and send an email to the city councilors, they can print it and send the letter. But at page 3 of my website, there is a letter there that supports the new voter information framework. Erica, I want to be very clear. I want to be very, very clear. You mentioned damages. Are you?
Well, hold on.
So this is a critical point. Damages in law means money. I am not seeking money. I am not getting any money for this. Some people out there might be thinking, well, who's paying it, whatever.
Right.
I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not billing for this. I cannot recover any money for this. There's nothing in statute that says I'm going to get any damages, also known as money. None.
Yes.
This is all I'm doing volunteer by myself. And so
yes. So what?
Sort of a misnomer.
No. That's why I want to come back to that. So I just wanted to take a moment to kind of reset us, make sure everybody knows that they can communicate, ask questions. And also, I just wanted to take a moment to thank today's sponsor. So this show's sponsor today is Top Cat Express. I'm wearing their fancy shirt here. Look at this logo. Is this little kitty cat not adorable? This has nothing to do with law. Sorry, I just had to take a moment because my husband, he won't let me get another kitty. Yes, I'm throwing you under the bus, Benjamin. He won't let me get a cat. He says we travel too much. But anyway, in all seriousness, my friend Michael Valdez has been driving and has been a professional driver for over 20 years. So he spent time, doing tour buses and driving for public officials, for sports, sports people, and all kinds of stuff, right? So he was like a legit actual driver for really important people. And now we're lucky to have him in Vermont. So he's based out of Stowe, but he definitely travels. And if you want a good driver experience, you don't want to just call up Joe Schmo Uber person who's going to show up and their car is going to smell like they were smoking cigarettes or other things for that matter, and they're playing terrible music, and then they have a bad attitude. I can't tell you how many bad Uber Lyft drivers I've had, especially in Burlington for whatever reason. But Michael has a really nice car. He shows up. He's very accommodating for the music you like. If you don't want to talk, he won't talk to you, and he can take you across town or even out of state. I know he's driven people to Boston and Montreal in the past. So go check out Top Cat Express. I'm going to show you guys his website or Facebook. Michael, if you're watching, I didn't see a website for you, but I saw your Facebook page. So he's got this Facebook page, Top Cat Express. His phone number, if you want to ride. Oh, it is topcatexpress.com. You need to work on your SEO, Michael. topcatexpress.com. Call him at 802-495-9505. It's 802-495-9505 or topcatexpress@yahoo.com. If you need a driver, if you want somebody that you can trust, especially if you want somebody who's tight-lipped because you got some business dealings that you're doing, Michael Valdez, Top Cat Express. So call my man. Okay. I appreciate you waiting for me, Ben. So I didn't want to interrupt you because it is really important that we talk about what the goal is. So maybe I shouldn't have said damages, because to me, right, like a lawsuit is you're seeking to get something, right? And I think often people just think of it as like money, But that's not what you're going for. Like you said, you don't have, you're not a landlord. You don't really have a ton to gain from this other than just, election integrity and law, following the rule of law and doing stuff like that. So your goal is to have some of these other these ideas put into place, right? So that it shows a pro con, that there are an independent analyst, show a fiscal analysis. So that's the goal, right?
That's one of the goals. Yes, that would be a tremendous reward for me. And that would be my payment if I could leave some sort of legacy, and perhaps a legacy in my own mind, right? If I go to die 30 years from now, and I know that I made a difference in the city of Burlington to improve voter access to transparent, clear voter information that was unbiased, I would be very, very deeply honored by that. I look back at what I did as a city council member, back to those days in the 90s when I fought the good fight to preserve wetland areas. Mm. Most of the people there now, they don't know that I waged a war along with a group of other people to preserve 30 acres from a big box development, right? That was in the early 1990s. I didn't get anything personal out of that. I got sued. I suppose I gave them because that inspired my interest in law. But that was a great reward for me, and it would be rewarding for me, perhaps at the outcome of all of this, that I leave something for voters. And really, my hope is ultimately that I'm not just doing this alone, that people who are listening would take interest, would go to my website, votesmartburlington.com, would take the time to review the materials. If you agree with the lawsuit and you agree of the need for a new voter information framework, then take the time to write that letter, write that email, send it to the mayor, send it to Max Tracy, send it to all the city councilors, and tell them you want a new voter information framework so that what happened on March 2nd this year does not repeat itself.
Yeah. And so that's why you've included this list. You've included a link to all the different counselors, and you wrote a letter to the city. So is this like a sample letter that people can use?
That is a sample letter. That is a sample letter that I'm providing to make it easy. Back to that understanding, people are busy, have busy lives. So I've made it easy. If you agree with what I'm saying, here's a convenient way for you to express your support. Just copy and paste this letter, mail it, fax it, drop it off, but take the time to do it.
Yep.
And let the city know that you want a new voter information framework. I've proposed it here. It's very straightforward. It's not an original idea by me. They've been doing it like this in California for decades. And there's absolutely no reason why the city of Burlington could not adopt this voter information framework.
I think that makes sense. So I have two big questions then left. We started to talk about this earlier. We've been exploring this idea of sovereign immunity, qualified immunity, and various immunities that municipalities get. So, you can have unscrupulous city councilors or mayors or public officials do dumb stuff and not get in trouble for it. Right. And I'm being a little bit, I'm speaking in shorthand here, but I'm thinking about if they make bad decisions, like we were discussing, for me personally, I asked our attorney, the city of Burlington is trying to force us to remove one of our apartments from our building using an illegal city ordinance. So they passed some ordinance and it was never approved by the Vermont state legislature, which means that it's illegal and they can't actually do that. And I said, why can't I then sue the city and at least get my attorney fees back or something like that? Because they're doing something illegal. And he said, oh, sovereign immunity, qualified immunity, whatever. So how are you overcoming all those various immunities with your lawsuit?
To be clear, there is no immunity with this voter lawsuit. Fortunately, the state of Vermont passed Title 17, Section 2603. Title 17, 2603 states that any legal voter in any municipality in the state of Vermont can sue that municipality over election results.
Ooh.
So the public out there should know about this statute. Again, Title 17, Section 2603 empowers legal voters in the city of Burlington or in any incorporated municipality in the state of Vermont to sue their town or sue their city if there is a basis to challenge the results of a local election, which is exactly what I have done right here.
That is so I did not know that. Did anybody else know that? Did you guys know we were allowed to do that? This may be outside of the scope. Maybe I should ask you this offline. You totally do not have to answer this. So does that mean we could theoretically sue, like, the fact that Vermont, in some circumstances, violated its own election laws by doing all mail-in ballots and all that stuff? Could people sue over that?
There is a 15-day statute of limitations. So if you're going to, with this particular law here that I have brought this lawsuit under.
The Title 17, 2603?
Yes.
Yep.
You must bring your lawsuit within 15 days. If you don't bring it within that 15-day period, then you may have some other remedy, but not this remedy here.
That is fascinating. Oh, I wish we had. See, this is why. So, I'm going to get upset. See, this is what makes me frustrated, because it's like, first of all, people don't even know what their own laws are, right? But how, if I'm not an attorney, how do I even know this Title 2603 exists? How do I know if, without like reading every law on the books or whatever in Vermont? How would I even know?
Yeah, you probably wouldn't. I found it, because I dug into it, because I was very irritable. I found it because I was determined to find a cause of action against the city. I want to touch very briefly, Erica, because I know time's running out. You mentioned things happening in Vermont and lack of accountability or ability to. One of the things I think is important to note, and a lot of people don't realize this here, and that is local municipal boards, city councils here, town councils in Vermont, and local government is grossly underregulated. If the Secretary of State's office has little to no teeth to enforce statutes that don't exist, that would exist elsewhere. If you look at states like California or New York, there are very, very, very high standards, and there are consequences, right, that people can pursue in regulatory agencies to enforce voter laws and to enforce open meeting laws. Those laws don't exist here. The Secretary of State's office is mostly toothless, as is the Attorney General's office when it comes to regulating and enforcing local town councils and the city council.
Really?
Yes, it's a whole topic for a whole other discussion, but having spent substantial time in local government in California and having done a lot of work here in local government, years ago I got Senator Joe Benning to sponsor a piece of legislation for me to strengthen local transparency with local municipalities. Unfortunately, it did not make it out of committee, but I raised the issue because I know that the laws in Vermont governing municipalities and town councils and city councils are really, really, really weak.
Yep. Well, and my understanding too is that we don't really have an ethics framework either for local elected officials and state elected officials and stuff like that. There's not really a framework where there's like a expectation set up of what it looks like to be an ethical lawmaker. And so if people are doing wild stuff, there's actually nothing in Vermont statute that allows us to do something about it.
Yeah, it's because there's nothing in statute to really do much about it. And as a result, people get away with stuff here that they wouldn't in a place. That doesn't mean that in California there are not abuses in local government, but they have the equivalent in California. For instance, there's a Federal Elections Commission. The state of California has its own form of elections commission, and they have enforcement authority. They have authority to issue fines. They have authority to impose criminal sanctions on people. That type of authority. I had some folks contact me about a similar election issue in another town, and they told me that they had contacted the Secretary of State's office, and there was nothing they could do. And then the Secretary of State's office told them to contact the Attorney General's office, and they said, "There's nothing we can do," right? And that would not be the case in a place like New York or California.
So if your town screws up your election, there's no mechanism for dealing with it?
Well, there is. I mean, I brought this suit,
right.
Under this.
Right.
But, I want to just make another point, Erica, to the extent that people do have the time, right? Let's be candid. There aren't enough people that are paying attention, right?
Correct.
Yes. And a lot of that's legitimate, people working hard, raising kids and family, but there's also a swath of the population that is not civically minded, and there is a need for more people to be civically minded. I don't care what your political stripe is, there's a need for more people to pay attention. And to the extent that more people are paying attention in municipalities, then chances are local governments are going to be held more accountable because there's people paying attention.
Well, and that's, when I saw that only 50% of Vermonters voted in the November election, and that's all of them got a ballot mailed to them, and 50% of those people couldn't be bothered to return their ballot. And I just went, that just shows you the level of apathy and disengagement of people in the state of Vermont. It's like, I know so many people that I talked to when I was out campaigning who were like, I'm not going to vote because why bother? They don't listen to me anyway. They don't care. There's no one to vote for. Like, there were tons of seats that went uncontested. Our state reps for my ward in the New North End of Burlington ran unopposed for the second time in a row. I don't know if people opposed them previously, but I'm like, why are all these people, why are half the city councilors running unopposed? Why are the House reps running unopposed? Why are all the Senate candidates running unopposed? Like,
well, it's an ongoing need, Erica. My personal philosophy and belief and why I filed this lawsuit is, over the years, community has given to me much. Right? The city of Burlington, where I lived in Morro Bay, where I lived in St. Johnsbury, each and every community I've lived in, the community has given me, and it's important for me to give in return something, whether that's filing a lawsuit against the city to hold people accountable, volunteering to pick up trash, helping out a neighbor, helping out the food shelter. So this community, typically, we derive something, so why not return on the investment?
Well, and stop waiting for the government to help your neighbor. Like, it's not the government's responsibility to help your neighbor. It's your responsibility to help your neighbor. And that's one of the things that I talk to people all of the time. It's like, we think that, we're just going to raise taxes and we'll just give our money to the government and then they'll go help people. And it's like, no, the government, all that money you give just goes to a bureaucracy. It just goes to like salaries and benefits of people that do, and then this much of it actually goes to the people who need it.
Yeah, I would disagree with you just a little bit, to the extent that, I think it's a team effort. I know I've benefited from government. I got my start at 18 years old from the California Conservation Corps. a state agency. Hard work, low pay, and miserable conditions was what I signed on to. That's what they told me when I was 18. Hard work, low pay, and miserable conditions. It was a government agency. I was guaranteed to earn almost nothing. I was 18 years old, being paid $3.10 an hour to fight fires in the mountains of California. It was a government agency. I was very grateful for that government agency because it instilled in me a sense of community and a sense of connection to community, and I've carried that forward. And so
I love that.
I really think that we're in this together. I think that there should be partnerships. I think you're absolutely right that I think there is a place for government, but people are too lazy. People are not paying enough attention to their neighbors, to help out their neighbors, to help out children, to offer to volunteer to tutor. There's a need. There's an
endless
yes.
There's an endless list of things that people need. Like, think about all the kids that are in virtual learning for the last year and a half and are falling behind.
People need to use these less.
Stop navel gazing and go meet your neighbors.
Yes, go meet your neighbors.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so as we wrap up, just a reminder, everybody, go to votesmartburlington.com. And then, so tell us before we go, Ben. I almost called you Mr. Luna. It's so hard. Ben, tell us status and next steps. So where are you at with this process and what's coming up next? How can people support you? Well, all three of those.
The next step is the City of Burlington needs to answer the complaint. They have not done so yet. Curiously, they're about out of time. Interestingly, the City of Burlington and the City Attorney's Office has not yet answered my complaint. With every lawsuit, when you file a complaint, a defendant files an answer where they have to admit or deny every single allegation.
Yep.
So I'm waiting for the city to answer the complaint. We'll go forward from there. I ask the voters, the citizens of the City of Burlington, just get involved a little bit. Take a look at my website, votesmartburlington.com. Look at the lawsuit, look at the exhibits, and take just a few minutes to contact the mayor, contact the city councilors, let them know that you want a new voter information framework that I have proposed on my website. It's not rocket science, folks. This is really simple stuff that other states are doing all over the country. I believe we can do it here. We should do it here, and we will do it here, but we'll only do it here with your help.
Yep. That is correct. I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it. Hey, honey, do you have a second to help me with the camera focus? All right. So this is awesome. I love it. Ben, thank you. I got one more thing to pitch before we go today. I am super excited about my new generally irritable mugs. Okay. So everybody knows the here, I'm going to hold it up. What's that? What's that? Okay. Everybody knows the eagle, me in the armor flying the eagle that we have in the intro. And then it says generally irritable on the other side. So if anybody is looking for a mug, we got mugs. They're awesome. I love this eagle. It's ridiculous. How close can we get? Wait, there, do this. Yes, it's me flying the eagle, y'all. You got it. Mugs for sale.
Where do I get one? Sign me up.
I'm gonna get you one that says, wait, you said you weren't generally irritable, you were really irritable. I'm gonna get you one, a special one. This is wicked irritable.
Super irritable with this really awful election garbage the City of Burlington tried to pass off as voter information.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so one more time before we go, Ben. So they can go to votesmartburlington.com. Is there somewhere on here for them to contact you if they have questions or they want more information? How would they get in touch with you?
My email address is on there.
Okay.
B Luna, B-L-U.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
bluna65 at Gmail. People can email me there. My P.O. box, there's my email address. My P.O. box is 1766.
Yep.
Burlington, send an email. If you want to have a phone conversation, send me an email with your telephone number. Be glad to call you, have a conversation about what I'm doing. If you want to know how you can support what I'm doing, give a call, send an email. And look, if nothing else, you just want to have a cup of coffee and sit down and talk about it. I'm glad to meet anyone here in Burlington. And you can tell me you disagree, why you disagree. That's fine. You know, I am completely open to listen to all sorts of views.
Well, and you know what? One last quick thing, actually, too. What kind of law do you, and then really, I swear I'll let you go. I'm sure you're very busy. One last quick. What other kind of law do you do? Like if people need a lawyer, can they contact you for something? What kind of law do you practice?
Sure. I do trial work. I do litigation. I do plaintiff's work. I do estate planning, a fair amount of estate planning. I do a lot of probate work. I do probate litigation. I also teach probate law. I teach litigation law. And I also get involved in some criminal defense. And I pretty much deal with anything in the friction zone.
Yeah.
I should have a show called The Friction Zone.
That I was going to say, write that down. That's a thing.
I tend to have a lot of peculiar cases that land on my desk. So I sort of do it all, but those are generally the areas of law that I get involved with.
All right. Well, maybe we're going to rope you into a special workshop of how to write a complaint or something like that.
Sure.
I got to write. Maybe I should write that down. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Okay, everybody, thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you, Ben, Luna, for coming on and talking about your suit.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Yes. And hold on with me. We're going to play the outro, and then we'll just chat for a minute before we go. But thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Happy Friday, and we'll see you next week.
All right, Erica. Take care.
Let's see. Yeah. Oh, I wasn't ready, you guys. Okay, here we go.